Am Julia Lescarbeau. As Danielle said, I am so excited to hang out with all of you guys today. Um, I am also completely understanding if nobody wants to share their screen. I know that this is my first day brushing my hair since March, so I'm totally cool with, hiding behind the screen, totally fine. But if you're down to show off your quarantine look, love to see that too. So excited about that. Like Danielle said, the chat feature, totally throw anything in there. Would love to hear about who you are, why you're here, of course, how you found out about the session. And I'm also allotting the second half of this Zoom call to be just for questions. I want to make sure I'm catering everything to who you are, what your major is, what needs and questions you have. That's really why I'm here. So you do have any questions, want to save it to the end, that's preferable. But if you're feeling a little shy, you can throw it in the chat. And then I also have my contact information at the very end. So you can just email me personally if you feel more comfortable. So with that said, I'm going to show my little presentation here. So I entitled this, WTF is PR? Like, what is PR? Who knows? We see all these memes about PR. We're not quite sure. How to take your first bite out of the Big Apple. So let me see if I can move to the next slide. Let me, tested this and everything.
We did.
We really did. Okay, hold on. Enter full screen. And here we go. About me. So I put a pic of me at Elon because I wanted you all to know I went to Elon. Also, I miss Elon dearly. I'm an old washed up alumni now. So this is my time to show my little Elon pic. So I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Florida. I currently live in New York City, as you guys know. I am quarantining with my boyfriend in Connecticut. So pretty nice there. I'm class of 2017. I was a leadership fellow at Elon. I was in the Sigma Kappa sorority. I was a tour guide. So I wanted to throw these things out there just to maybe paint a picture of who I am. If you guys have any connections, I love chatting about these things. I'm a huge Elon nerd. So if you have any connects, let me know, especially those tour guides out there. I know you love to talk. I'm here for it. Cool. So I am now a senior account executive at a PR agency called Nike Communications, not to be confused with the shoe, Nike Communications. We are a PR agency specializing in luxury boutique brands. So I myself work on what's called the lifestyle team. So my agency has a hospitality team, a spirits team, a travel team, and then a lifestyle team, which is kind of a mixed bag. So I personally touch beauty, wellness, fashion, and technology. So those are the brands that I'm on now. My previous agency, I worked mainly on consumer tech and spirits. So I have a wide breadth of knowledge in a lot of different pieces of a lot of different industries, which is kind of cool. But I can talk more about that as we go on. So enough about me, why we're here, what is PR, what is public relations. We know that Sam Jones from Sex and the City was a publicist and that was cool, but really what is it? So public relations, when it comes down to it, is kind of developing a communications strategy. So what is your message, what is your story, and how are you going to tell it? So traditional PR is, after you develop this story and you develop what your goal is, whether that's you're trying to sell a product or you're trying to elevate an executive as a thought leader, maybe you want a CEO to be interviewed, by the New York Times, whatever it might be, the traditional PR is developing the goal and then pitching it to an editor. So if you want your CEO to be in the New York Times, who is the editor at the New York Times that you're going to pitch and you're going to take out to lunch, talk about something, and collaborate on the story with? So that's traditional PR. Crisis communications is also, of course, pretty relevant right now in today's pandemic. So that is understanding what your strategy is, again, what are you communicating and what is the overall goal? So if there is a crisis, how are you responding? And what is the thoughtful, strategic way that you are going to respond to an issue? So whether that is COVID-19, or perhaps there's some scandal going on in your company, or there was an issue at a factory that your company works with, whatever it might be. Crisis communications is a really hot topic, something that's interesting. I have a friend that does crisis communications for Tide. So when the Tide Pod situation went down, when people were eating those, that was a whole strategy that she worked on for weeks. So that's just another example of PR. Digital PR. So what is digital PR? This is social media marketing, or it's public relations through influencers. So say you're trying to sell, or you're trying to launch a new line of leggings. And so you are going to, tap these 3 influencers and work with them again on that story, that message, to collaborate on a caption, a post, a story that makes sense for their audience and for your goal. And you also want to make sure these influencers are different and bring different things to the table. So whether that's some micro influencers, some major influencers, so smaller following, larger following. Maybe you want to have, different ages, a man and a woman, that sort of thing. So digital PR is really hot, of course, as Instagram and TikTok and all of that is really interesting. I remember when, I saw like TikTok when it came out, I was like, is this Vine? I don't really understand. And now it's a huge PR tool. So making sure we're staying ahead of these social media trends and using them to tell our story. And then I also put on your agency. So I know that when I was in school, I was kind of confused as like, what is a PR agency? Do I want to be at an agency? What is in-house versus agency? So basically, if you are in-house doing in-house public relations, then that means you are the client. And if you are at an agency, you are working on various accounts, various clients. So for instance, if you are in-house at Lululemon, then that means you work for Lululemon and you are their in-house communications person. Whereas if you're at an agency and you have Lululemon as an account, you might also have, Ritual Vitamins as an account. You might also have LaCroix as an account. You might have a few different things. So for me, I really liked joining an agency after school because it gave me that, ability to touch a lot of different clients, a lot of different industries, to find my niche, find out what I was good at, what I liked doing. So you might find that you have great sense of style and you love fashion, but you don't like pitching it, or like you don't really feel passionate about pitching it out. Or you might find that you love consumer tech, even though you are a comm major and you were like, I don't care about tech, but you might love it. So who knows? I really recommend an agency, especially when you're first starting out. It's a great way to learn, meet a lot of people, and get a really wide range of experiences in a shorter amount of time. So then how do you do it? How do you break into the industry, the public relations world, especially in a big city, whether it's New York or LA? So I really think it's all about networking. It's all about socializing. And a lot of that you can even do virtually. I remember that every single Thursday of my senior year, I would go to the Oak House and I would email alumni, and then I would schedule phone calls with alumni and just talk to people all day long. And that was like my Thursday routine. And it got me to a great place where I got a lot of interviews and I met a lot of awesome people, got a lot of great advice. So we definitely would recommend doing that, especially because you can do that virtually. And I'm sure a lot of us have more time on our hands than we were used to in the normal world. So for instance, going on LinkedIn, finding people you have connections with, and just taking the initiative to reach out. For me, I'd say like, oh, hi, I'm an Elon alum. I'm looking for some advice into the world. So instead of saying, I saw you work at X agency and I want you to pass my resume along, make it a conversation. So say, I saw that you went to Elon and you were a tour guide and now you're working in New York City. And I'd love to just pick your brain and talk about, how you got there, any advice you might have, and start the conversation. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to want to talk to you. First of all, Elon, we're a family. We love talking to each other. And second of all, like you're kind of boosting their ego saying, I'd love to hear your expert advice. And I want to chat through how you got to where you are today. And then from there, I'm sure they're going to say, like, you know what, pass me your resume. Let's look through your resume. I'll help you revamp it. Or these are some steps I would take. Or here's a person I think you should reach out to. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get that next step after initiating a conversation with someone. So if it's family, friends, alumni, these are all great people for you to reach out to, even if it's just to chat. And who knows, even if they don't help you right now, they can't get you a job right now. Maybe in a year, you're going to say, oh, I just saw that person on my LinkedIn got hired at X company that I'd love to work at. I'm going to reach out. I have found great success with that, and people want to talk to you. So with that in mind, definitely recommend sending up those intro interviews where you just call them, talk about how they got to where they are, plan, like prepare, make sure you have some questions set aside so that you can talk through different things. Ask them what they're reading, anything that they would recommend you read, whether that's maybe it's a journalist that you should check out, maybe it's a new newsletter that you should add to your inbox each morning. These are the questions and things that you should ask. Don't just call them and be like, so what's up? Make sure you have an agenda in your mind of things you want to talk through. And also, be respectful of their time. Keep it less than 30 minutes, have your questions, always follow up with an email, always follow up and say thank you. Thank yous go a huge way, guys. Like everyone wants to see an email that just says, thank you so much for taking the time to chat and remember me, like let's stay in touch. Looking forward to staying in touch. With that in mind, revamp your resume. So first of all, we are comm majors. So you have the right to get creative. So you're not a finance guy. You should not have a one-page black and white resume. Be creative, show your style. And also you're a communicator. Make sure that your language is interesting. You're using buzzworthy, pieces of like language. You're using terms that are relevant in your industry and that are jumping off the page. Don't just say like, I did this, I built a report, like I developed media reports, I media monitored, I created this, I used, my ability to research trends. Like think about creative ways to tell your story in a way that's going to differentiate you from the crowd. If there's a stack of 30 resumes on the table, what's making yours jump out? And furthering that concept, the cover letter. We're communicators. This cover letter is a great way for you to show off your writing chops. You know what I mean? Make sure that it's interesting. It separates you from the crowd. It's not reading like every other person's cover letter. This is a writing sample. So many communications offices will ask you for a writing sample as a next step in the interview process, but you won't get to that next step if your cover letter didn't show them that you were a strong writer. So make sure to take the time to curate each cover letter to each agency. Don't just use the same template for each one. Your resume can stay the same once you've perfected it, but make that cover letter different for each job you're applying to. Make sure that it talks about the exact title. If the job posting is there, take some of the words from the job posting, show that you're paying attention. That stuff really goes a long way. And then with that, I would love to open it up for questions. I have been talking a mile a minute and sorry about that. I've had maybe too much coffee today, but I wanted to cover off a lot with you guys. So if you want to ask via the chat, I saw a few of you were throwing some chats in here during the presentation, or if you prefer to unmute yourself and ask me, would love to chat through that with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free. If you have any questions for Julia, you can unmute yourself. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see the microphone. You're welcome to turn that off, or you can type them up into the chat feature and we'll answer them there. That was wonderful, Julia. Great recommendations. I cannot agree with you more. but resumes, cover letters, networking, informational interviewing, so important. I guess if I'll get started off with a question. I know something that you mentioned about the importance of building a relationship with someone. You mentioned about reading articles or reading blogs or reading newsletters or subscribing. So I'm curious to know, for those who are interested in PR, what kind of mediums do you stay up to date with what's happening in terms of hot topics or in the PR industry that you've enjoyed along the way, either as a student or currently as a professional?
Sure. So to be honest, with my job, I read everything. I read the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Refinery 29, Glamour, everything. And then in the morning, I listen to, 3 different podcasts throughout the day. I try to take in a lot of different things, and a lot of that is because I work with a lot of different clients. So I need fashion news, beauty news, consumer tech news. And then I also want to stay as an informed individual. So I read a lot of things. I think that following people is great on social media too. If you don't want to read, longer articles, I would recommend 100% New York Times, Wall Street Journal. PR Week is great. Ad Age and Ad Week are great, even though they're more advertising than PR. They talk about awesome communications campaigns, which are a great way to see what people are doing, especially right now. I found during the coronavirus, it's really interesting to see what brands are doing and what messages they're putting out there. So I'd certainly recommend that. I'd also recommend following brands that you like. Pick your top 5 dream companies to work for. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on LinkedIn, and see what they're posting. So if they're posting articles from Refinery 29, then you should be reading Refinery 29. If they're showing their clients are, in the Wall Street Journal, Off Duty, or W Magazine, then like you should be reading those too. So make it targeted towards what you want, and then you'll also be able to speak to those things when you interview with these companies. So you can say, "Oh, I saw you had a client in the New York Times last week. I loved that article. Like, really just resonated with me. Loved that. How did you make that story happen?" Instant icebreaker conversation. You sound like a genius. Do it, guys. Do it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'm looking through some of this chat. Oh, yay, leadership pillow.
I just had a quick question as well. If you're gonna, but you can answer the one in the chat first, and I'll.
Oh no, go for it. I was just doing that to waste the time, but I'm glad.
Okay.
Who's speaking? Sorry.
But my name's Kirsten. I said in the chat, and I'm a senior, and I'm planning on moving to New York after graduation, I guess, whenever that is supposed to be. But I had a question, just because I completed an internship in New York over the summer, and something I kind of felt like I was struggling with is just that it is so much bigger than Elon. I kind of feel like because Elon's such a small school, it's kind of a little bit easier to kind of maybe rise to the top of the class, make connections super easily just because you have more of that one-on-one time. But then kind of New York is just a whole different animal, and there's so many people that are at the top of their game, and it's just really competitive. So how do you kind of not get down on yourself and make sure that you're always doing the best that you can, and just kind of stay competitive when there are so many people that are similarly at the top of their class and doing everything?
And that is a great question. So thank you so much. I totally understand. I'm from a small town in Florida, and I came to Elon and was like, this is great. And then went to New York and was like, this is a beast, like a beast. And you're going to have good days and bad. And to that, I'm going to say networking again, but in this way, social. So build your tribe, build your support system, and make it a point. So I remember when I first moved to New York City, I had like 5 friends from Elon that we all literally graduated Elon and moved to New York 5 days later. And we were all like, what are we doing? We don't know what's happening. Why are we paying $23 for lunch? What's going on? And we just made it a point to every Friday night meet for happy hour or like meet for food, whatever, and just talk about like what happened that week. And it was an awesome thing just to also know that you kind of have a family when you're not home, and talk through like, wait, so my boss said this and I freaked out because I've never done that before. Does anybody know what this means? And maybe you also have like a group chat where you can be like, does anybody know what OTG means? Or does anybody know what like an RFP is, and then you'll have that support system, and you're also friends. So there's like no embarrassment. And also healthy competition is great. So if you have a couple friends and you're both working in PR and maybe, you know, your friend's doing a little better, seems a little more comfortable than you are, be like, you look like you've got it together. What's going on? Ask those questions. Be vulnerable. Lean on your friends, because after school, it's a big culture shock and you're going to need a support system. And I honestly think that your friends, especially those that move to big cities, are going to have the tools and the support to help you out, and you guys can kind of work with each other. And then separately, I would really recommend finding a mentor. I know they talk about that a lot at Elon. Stay in touch with your Elon mentors 100%, but find someone at your company that you feel comfortable talking to, asking questions to. Ask them for if you can take them to coffee, and, you know, have that support system even directly at your company. Find someone who's a year older than you, 2 years older than you, someone that you have a connection with, and I'm sure they're going to want to have a new friend too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we do have a question in the chat box, Julia, for you. We have two now. So we'll get to the first one. What tips do you have for students who've had their internships canceled? And do you have any tips for how students can maximize their time, about what skills they maybe could be learning this coming summer?
Yes, that is a great question. And first of all, guys, hats off to you. You're the class of Corona, some of you, and like that sucks. I was just telling Danielle, my brother had virtual graduation yesterday, and you know, it's a tough time, and everyone is going to remember this and remember you guys, and this is going to show a lot of, you know, tenacity on your end. It definitely is really tough if you've had your internships canceled, but stay in touch with those companies. See if like they need any, be like, I'm happy to work if you're willing to work for, you know, not being paid, if you're willing to work remotely. See if there's any opportunities to stay in touch or work on a project for them remote. That initiative is definitely impressive. And then also when you have, you know, we talked about maximizing your time, take a day every week where you're calling alumni, setting up time with alumni, and saying like, what are you up to? How has your company been handling this? Like, do you have any advice? Definitely stay up on your reading. Make sure you're reading the news. You can take a lot of free classes right now. I know through like Yale and Harvard and Elon too, I'm sure. LinkedIn Learning. If you take classes on LinkedIn Learning, you can post them on your LinkedIn profile. So that's really cool. Different things like that. Boosting, maybe you really take this time to spend a full week designing your resume in InDesign, or maybe you make like 6 cover letter examples that you just save to your desktop that you have on hand. Maybe you're taking the time to build a writing portfolio. So building a writing portfolio, you're gonna need it eventually. So it's like an example of a pitch, how you would pitch an editor. Maybe you have an example of a fashion pitch, an example of a, you know, corporate communications pitch. I saw one of you's interested in corporate communications. Building that portfolio, like maybe you're going to put together a strategy, a communication strategy. Maybe you did one at Elon in one of your classes, but you think you could do better now that you're a senior. Revamp it, have it on hand, build a portfolio. That takes a lot of time, and you'll have the time right now.
That's awesome recommendations, and I definitely agree with all of that. So awesome to hear that from you, Julia. Another kind of question came through, and I can certainly relate to this one, as I remember just getting started in my career. So how would you recommend for maybe an intern or even a full-time hire to work on an assignment or a task with something that you've actually never done before? How would you kind of navigate that in the workplace?
Okay, this is a great question, because we have all been there. We have all been like, should I fake it till I make it? And let me tell you, don't. Don't fake it. If you don't know how to do something, especially as an intern or someone who's new to the company, ask questions. Be somebody that is thoughtfully inquisitive. So instead of saying, I've never done this before, how do I do it? Say, how would you recommend I start? Is there a past example of something like this that I could reference? Dig around in a server, look on the news. If someone says, you know, I want you to put together a media list for, you know, maybe you don't know what media list, go into your company's server and search media list in the file and see what comes up and say, oh, okay, now I know what a media list is. So I have a few questions and I can ask, how many people do you want on this list? Do you want people that have covered fashion in the past year or the past month? Make sure that you are understanding what you can do step by step, but ask thoughtful questions. Don't just say, oh, I've never done this before. Make yourself look like you are inquisitive and you're excited, you're eager, but you want to make sure that you're delivering them what they asked for. I hope that answers your question.
An awesome answer. Awesome. Yeah, you got to use what you got, right? And to ask those questions,
Exactly.
ask for a little bit of help. That's why you got to start somewhere, right? To pull back
Start
on education and start there. And then if not, then ask around. There's a lot of mentors, I'm sure.
Right. And again, like I said, with that, like your social network, like your tribe in your new city, ask them, be like, friends, what the heck is a media list? Does anybody know? Because someone's going to know. Someone's going to help you. And they're going to say, oh, I figured that out last week. And they'll tell you.
Perfect. Yes. Another question for you, Julia, maybe a bit of a personal question. So did you always know that you wanted to get into PR? And what would you recommend to those who are maybe still exploring whether they want to get into PR or advertising?
Sure. Great question. Also, I am an open book friend. So whatever you want, I'm here for it. I came into Elon, weird flex, as a music and broadcast journalism double major. And I was like, I'm going to be a sports journalist, and that's going to be really cool for me. And then I took AP writing and I was like writing for the teleprompter. And I was like, oh my God, I really hate this. I don't feel like I can be creative because I'm like, this is the new, like you have like, you know, if you've taken this class, like it's 3 sentences about like, this is the news, this is what happened, everything's perfect AP style, and that's the deal. And a lot of people are so good at that and do a great job. I just felt like I wanted to keep writing and I wanted to use the fluffy words and I wanted to be a little bit more creative in the storytelling. And that's kind of how I fell into PR. And you know, I love researching and I love reading different story angles and coming up with cutesy titles and that sort of thing. And that's how I fell into public relations. Public relations versus advertising or marketing. From what I have experienced, advertising and marketing have a lot more math involved. So if you are someone that is, you know, maybe you're in the business school and the comm school, or maybe you love numbers and you love like quantitative goals, then you might be better suited in an advertising or marketing. Advertising too, maybe you want to go on the art side, like you have a graphic design minor, or you know, you work for the Elon magazine that I forget the name of it, but it's really cool and I remember it. I'm just losing my memory, but maybe you love like doing the design and you have an eye for style and you love InDesign and you want to be using InDesign every day. Maybe advertising creative is for you. There's a lot of different things you can go into. And also, it's not like one shot and you're there. If you go to PR for a year and you're like, I don't know about this, you can change into go into the advertising field. It's not like you're gonna, like for instance, once you decide you're gonna be a doctor, you're pretty much gonna be a doctor. Communications, you can flow. You can flow through, guys.
Incredible. Yes, you can flow.
If you don't like it, try something else.
Yeah. Another question for you. Awesome questions so far. Keep them coming. Any tips for rising sophomores? So for a current first year student, and were you a part of PRSSA or any of the similar organizations on Elon's campus? And how did you network with those organizations?
Sure. Okay. So first is sophomores. Sophomore year is awesome. Get involved. You're no longer like, I remember freshman year, I went around the Elon org fair and like signed up for 100 clubs and was like, cool, I want to be in everything. Everybody's so nice. Sophomore year is your year to be like, actually, I want to focus on these 3. Like I want to be in these 3 things. Sophomore year is your time to do what you actually want to do and like you actually care about. So take the time to figure out like, what do I want my Elon legacy to be? I want to be in XYZ. What do I want my major to be? Sophomore year is pretty much when a lot of people declare their majors. I mean, no pressure, but that's kind of your time to be like, do I want to be in the comm school? Okay, what in the comm school do I want to be? Do I want to be in an English major? Like what jobs come from that? It's a time to explore, but sophomore year is a big time to declare like, here's who I am, here's what my major is going to be. It might change by the time I'm a senior, but right now I feel pretty good about it. And I'm going to be in these 3 clubs. Speaking of clubs, I was very involved at Elon. I was in PRSSA. I didn't like have a leadership position in it. I was very much involved in Elon Volunteers, and I was actually the public relations director for Elon Volunteers. Another great thing is being in clubs and organizations that interest you, but also if I'm really interested in volunteering, which I am, I was in Elon Volunteers, but I want to be a public relations associate. So I'm going to try to, be the public relations person for Elon Volunteers because that is going to go on my resume. So finding also creative ways to make everything fit together in your story. So like I said in my first slide, I did fellows, I did Greek life, tour guide, did PRSSA. I worked at the call center for a hot second. And Elon Volunteers was like a huge, huge thing too.
That's incredible. You balanced a lot.
Stand.
Good for you. Good for you. And what kind of skills would you say that you were able to transfer maybe from those experiences into the current role that you have now or the role that you had when you first graduated from Elon?
So my experiences with the clubs.
Sure. Like any skills that you were able to kind of particularly segue into your next role in your life after Elon that were particularly helpful for you?
Of course. So, I mean, anytime you get to sharpen your writing skills is a great experience. So, with, Elon Volunteers, I was creating communications materials that were social media graphics, or maybe they were, flyers for students, or they were comms plans to Elon University of like, this is what we want to do, and this is we need your help here. Skills involving networking. So asking people for things, whether that's fundraise, like anytime you can practice public speaking, it's a huge skill. It's a huge, great thing to have. And you're building your portfolio and you're building your network anytime you talk to someone or write something. So even those little things are great. And then everything in my classes, you're going to be surprised because you're like, when am I ever going to use this? And you actually do all the time. I know my like strategic research class I took with Professor Denise Hill. I don't know if she's still there, but just doing all the back work and doing all the research before you even start a communications campaign. I use that all the time. So you really do use a lot of different skills that you'll pick up at Elon in your time.
That's good to hear. I know there's a lot of really great things that professors are teaching and that students are learning from internships that they can kind of connect the dots with for life after Elon. So that's awesome to hear.
Yes.
Maybe time for another question or two for everyone here. So maybe if you would like to talk about, Julie, a little bit more about what your journey was like into your current role at Nike Communications, and then also what your maybe application and interview experience was like for maybe boutique agencies.
Great. Yes. So first of all, make sure you get the experience. The internships are super important. Everyone who is applying for a job has had some sort of internship experience, and Elon really equips you with a lot of ways to get those internships. So make sure you take advantage of that. I did several different PR internships while I was at school, 2 with nonprofits, and that is also a hot tip. If you're having trouble finding an internship, nonprofits always need help, and they always want smart, eager students to come and help them. And sometimes they can help you with a paycheck, but other times you can just volunteer your time and they want it. And that's awesome experience to put on your resume. We'll also give you more, like I remember when I was at a nonprofit, they let me do so much work and I got to carry in all that work to my writing portfolio, press releases, pitches, strategies, everything. So definitely check out nonprofits. And even while you're home, be like, if there's a local charity, say, do you need help during quarantine? Can I help make some graphics for you? Or can I help do a press release for you? That sort of thing. People need it and want it, especially young, awesome students like you guys. So anyways, I had a lot of internship experience. I worked at an agency in Greensboro during a summer at Elon called RLF Communications. They're great if you want to check them out. And then when I was a senior, like I said, every Thursday I would talk to alumni. And there was a girl who I was friendly with, 2 years older than me, who worked at RLF Communications too. And I just made a great point of staying in touch with her. And she contacted me. So once again, going back in my story, in these intro meetings, we would chat, talked about how she got to where she was. And she was like, I'd love to look at your resume. She gave me pointers on like what she would recommend highlighting and what she said I should just nix. Because once again, if you have 3 awesome things, but they're sandwiched between 6 like okay things, it's not going to stand out as well. Anyway, she's awesome, super great resource for me. Then a month later, she was like, my agency is actually hiring an account coordinator. And if you want, I'll pass your resume along. And I was like, well, heck yeah, I want that to happen. And of course, I've been interviewing and applying for other jobs as well. And I actually had a couple other opportunities coming to fruition around, the March, April time before graduation. And then I ended up getting the job at my first agency, which was Force NYC through an Elon alumni. So that was awesome. She became my mentor at that company, which was great. I went to her wedding last summer, building these relationships through Elon. It was awesome. And then after a while, I was sharpening my skills, and I had this other agency, Nike Communications, kind of reaching out to me a little bit, a few other agencies. And I kind of was like, I'm ready for a next step in my growth. I feel like I've grown a lot. I worked at my previous agency almost 3 years, and I was like, I'm ready for what's next. And so I started, interviewing with Nike, and I did like a huge writing test for them where they were like, this is your client, give us what you would recommend, building out a comm strategy for them. And I've been there over a year, almost a year and a half now at Nike.
That's an incredible story. The alumni are strong and mighty. And I'm so
It's real. Like, I'm not just saying it. Elon people love Elon people, and they want to help you out.
I see that all the time, and you're proof of that as well. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. So I think I want to be mindful of everyone's time and whatnot, but I guess this is the final opportunity for any final questions. Or if Julia, if you have any further pieces of advice or recommendations or resources that you would like to share with the attendees.
Yeah, sure. So I just changed the slide with my email. Let me make sure it's all right. My last name, guys, is a headache and a half, so sorry about it. This is my personal email and my LinkedIn. Please email me, stay in touch. I would love to talk to all of you individually. If you want to set up an intro call, practice an intro call with me, I'm happy to do it. I also have extra time on my hands. I'm working remotely, of course. I'm always happy to answer any questions you may have, even if it's just I've been waiting for 2 weeks to hear back from this agency. Do you have any advice on following up? That sort of thing. Just if you take anything away from this, build your network, stay in touch with people, make yourself stand out from the crowd, and always, always send thank you notes.
Incredible.
I appreciate you guys all joining today. It's good to see you all. Just scrolling through your little pictures.
Yeah, we have a great show in here.
Hi, Julia. It's Dr. Clark.
Hi, Dr. Clark.
I saw your list and I was so excited. I don't even have makeup on. I just jumped on the thing to say hi to you. So hi, sweetie.
It's my first time wearing makeup since March. All for you guys.
You were wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So good to see you, Dr. Clark. Hope you're well.
That was wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to go ahead and connect with Julia. And once again, a major round of applause, virtual round of applause for you, Julia. Job well done. I learned some things as well, too. So your time and your resources are greatly appreciated. Take care, everyone, and keep an eye out for future meetups. We can't wait to see you there. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Stay in touch.
Thank you.